Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, the show that takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible.
Welcome to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello, everybody. How's it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Happy Thursday. I hope you're having a great and productive and happy and positive week. This week has been flying by for me. This month just flew by. I cannot believe we are already in October, and life is just flying by right now for me. I can't even explain it. So happy Thursday, happy week. Hope you're feeling good and positive. I hope, you are not as overwhelmed as I am with how fast time seems to be going right now. I cannot believe it. Anyways, so today's episode, I'm excited to share all this information with you because I think it is something that we can all relate to, that we all need to talk about a little bit more, and that is self-criticism. We all have our ups and downs in lives. We all have our hills and valleys, and we make mistakes, we fail, we go through some rough patches, and we tend to be our own worst critic when it comes to those things. And, criticism is a really difficult thing. I think, of course, there's constructive criticism, and I'm all for constructive criticism. I'm all for trying to improve myself and for others trying to help me improve as well. But that does not mean that it's easy to listen and to take on that self-criticism, right? Or the criticism in general, whether it's somebody else giving you the criticism or yourself, it's really difficult to absorb that sometimes, right? And we can get really defensive when it comes to criticism, especially I feel like when it's from somebody else, even if they're just trying to help us. No one wants to hear all the bad things that they've been doing, or the mistakes that they made or anything like that. And so we get into kind of this defense mode when somebody else tries to criticize the things that we're doing. And there's definitely constructive criticism, and then there's criticism that is just pure mean, okay? That is just not beneficial, but if you can take in constructive criticism, it is such an important and valuable tool to improve yourself and to feel better. So with all of that being said, today we're talking all about self-criticism in particular. We will get criticism no matter what we do, but we will always be our own worst critic because we are hard on ourselves. That is just human nature, because we care. I think, we want to be the best version of ourselves, and every single day we are trying to grow and transform into that version of ourselves. And like I said, we all make mistakes. We all go through hills and valleys. So of course we're going to have things that we need to work on, and there's going to be things that we criticize. But we have to find that healthy balance of self-criticism, and we have to find the art of self-criticism, which is exactly what today's episode is about, is criticizing yourself in a healthy and beneficial way, not something that's going to be tearing you down or making you feel worse about yourself or giving yourself a poor self-image, right? There's definitely ways that we can talk to ourselves and we can criticize ourselves that will benefit us in the future, like 100%. I think self-criticism is really important, but we have to make sure that we are doing it with compassion and care and love for ourselves, and not in such a negative way that can just really tear our self-esteem down and how we feel about ourselves. And self-love is so important. It's so cliche, but it's so important. Self-love and self-care. We have to make sure that we are loving ourselves in every aspect, or else, it's going to be really hard to live your life to the happiest and the fullest. So let's talk all about the art of self-criticism. And when we fail at something that is important to us, especially whether that's, in a relationship, at school, at work, when we fail, it can be very painful. When we do not live up to our potential or that we believe is our potential, it can be really painful. When we, we have high standards of how we're going to achieve something, we make a mistake or we fail, it can be really painful to deal with that. And it's natural, it's human. And these experiences can really threaten the very core of who we think we are and who we want to be. And that's why it's so important to understand the art of self-criticism and to make sure that you are, criticizing yourself in a beneficial way, because if we don't, it can really eat at the person that we are and the person that we want to be, and it can really halt our growth process. And to cope with failure, we often turn to those self-protective strategies. We rationalize what happened so that it places us in a more positive light. Sometimes we blame other people. We discount the importance of the event. A lot of us just avoid things. I know I'm like that. I tend to just avoid something that makes me feel very uncomfortable, or that makes me feel anxious, or if I made a mistake, I like to just not talk about it. I'm a little bit of a runner, run away from my problems, run away from the things that make me feel low on myself. And we can't do that either. It's one thing to talk down to ourselves, and then there's one thing to run away from our problems as well. We have to find a very happy medium that is going to benefit our growth. So, these strategies that we do, trying to put ourselves in a more positive light, blaming other people, running away from these things, discounting the importance of the event, these strategies can make us feel better about ourselves in the short term. I know when I run away from my problems, it makes me feel good for a little bit because I'm just avoiding it and not dealing with it. But they are less likely to actually help us improve, or actually avoid repeating our mistakes in the future. So research actually shows that people who have an overly inflated view of their performance on an academic task, for example, show decrements in subsequent motivation and performance, compared to people who view themselves more realistically. And this makes sense because if you think you're really great, it may feel like there's no need to put the effort into improving yourself. So the key to all of this is taking an honest look at ourselves, right? We have to be honest with ourselves, which I think is the hardest thing to do sometimes. And when it comes to self-criticism, we have to be real and honest, but we also have to come from a loving and compassionate place so that we're not tearing down the person that we are, the very core of who we think we are or who we want to be. And it all comes down to honesty. And this is where a lot of people run away, or people avoid it, or they blame somebody else because they have a hard time being honest with themselves of the improvements that they need to make, or the standpoint that they are with themselves. And so taking an honest look at ourselves is, of course, it's easier said than done, and confronting our inner demons can be very, very overwhelming, and it can lead to feelings of our hopelessness and despair, which leads us down the path of mental illness, depression, anxiety, things that really take a toll on our overall well-being. So, we have to be determined to take responsibility, and sometimes we can get carried away when we are taking on our responsibility, and we can blame ourselves for far more than our share, than we need to be blaming ourselves for, and we can come down really hard on ourselves, which is, it's, it can really be kind of the devil in our self-love and self-care is self-criticism. It is the thing that can really tear us down, and we can dig ourselves such a deep hole where then we are left with those feelings of hopelessness and despair, that I am never good enough, I'm always a failure, I will always be making mistakes, and so far. So today's episode is all about taking an honest look at ourselves, finding the art of self-criticism so that we're actually improving our overall well-being without tearing apart the core of who we are. I'm going to, of course, be giving you some tips and tricks and things that we can do when it comes to self-criticism. And I'm going to be talking about those healthy habits that we need to do, the way that we should be talking to ourselves, the way that we should look at ourselves when it comes to self-criticism, how to handle those difficult situations. There's so much to the art of self-criticism, so I'm super excited to be sharing all this information with you today. So with all that being said, it is time for a little bit of a break, but you better not go anywhere because there's so much information to be shared, and this is such an important subject that I think we can all relate to. So stay tuned so I can teach you how to master the art of self-criticism so that you can live your life to the happiest and the fullest. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so I've been sleeping in all of my products from Linens and Hutch, and I have to say I've been having the best sleep. I actually purchased the bamboo sheet set, and these sheets are the nicest sheets I have ever tried. I've never really been able to afford really awesome sheets before, but with Linens and Hutch, they offer such high quality products at the best possible price because they're working directly with the manufacturers, so they're able to cut out the middleman and then pass on those savings to us so that we can be enjoying this affordable luxury products. Not only that, it's fast, free shipping. They have a 100-day trial period, money back guaranteed if you were not happy. But since you are a Life and Happiness listener, you need to head on over to linensandhutch.com/life. Then you can enter in the promo code GSMC Life, and you will be receiving 60% off 4-piece solid sheets.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast. Hello, my name is Alyssa Jo, in case you forgot. Today we're talking all about the art of self-criticism. It is inevitable. We are all our own worst critic. It just happens, and it's true for everybody at some point that we all come down on ourselves way too hard sometimes, and we need to learn how to self-criticize in a healthy and beneficial way so that we are actually improving who we are and working towards the best version of ourselves instead of tearing down the person that we are, the person that we want to be at our very core. So, many people believe that being hard on themselves will make them better people, but this is not true, and research actually does not support this belief because research is saying that self-criticism has been shown to increase procrastination and impede your goal progress. So if you already feel worthless and incompetent, you may feel like there's no point in even trying to do better next time. So this is that self-esteem. This is those feelings of hopelessness. It's tearing down the person that we are, that we don't even want to try anymore. If you are somebody who has struggled with mental illness, you would understand this feeling quite well. And this is what, sometimes depression can feel like, anxiety can feel like, that there's just no point in trying to improve or trying to do better. And it's all because of our inner dialogue, our inner thoughts that tear us down, right? We are seriously our own inner demon sometimes, that we come down on ourselves for things that we absolutely should not. So, we have to stop trying to fix ourselves, because it's not about fixing ourselves. It's, we have to instead improve ourselves through our own self-love. We have to stop fixing. We have to start loving. And I feel like we always look at ourselves as like a project. Oh, I have to do better. I have to fix myself. I have to fix the way I handle this situation, instead of looking at it in a loving way. Okay, so I handled this situation badly. Okay, so now what did I do? Really trying to break it down, do some self-reflection, find that self-love within that problem, right? We have to be looking at ourselves from a loving standpoint, not from a I need to be fixed standpoint. I hope that makes sense. So we have to push ourselves in the right way. And instead of pushing ourselves with shame and hatred and that judgmental self-criticism, we have to motivate ourselves through praise and positive motivation and drive and self-love and self-care. And when we motivate ourselves with that praise and that positive motivation and drive and that right type of self-criticism through a loving aspect, when we do this regularly, you will notice so many amazing things. You are going to notice the love and self-compassion, how it can shift even with the strongest, it can shift the strongest negative thoughts and emotions, and it can allow you to enjoy more of your life, that's what it's all about, right? That's what I'm here to also help you do. Live your life to the happiest and the fullest and enjoy more of your life. Because that's what the real goal is, right? We want to enjoy our life. We want to be happy. We want to love ourselves and feel good about ourselves. So if we keep driving ourselves using self-criticism, we're never going to be truly happy, no matter how perfect we are, because we're not actually going to be enjoying the process, because it's going through a self-criticizing kind of process instead of just enjoying the journey of self-love and self-care and self-improvement. And I believe that the happiest people in life aren't the ones with the least baggage. They are just the ones who learn to carry that baggage better so that they can enjoy the ride. It's all about handling the things that are going on in your life, the situations that are being thrown at you, those curveballs, that obstacle course that life is putting you through. It's all about the way that you carry yourself through it, and you carry that baggage and you handle those obstacles, right? Are you going to handle them with that positive motivation and drive and that self-praise and that self-compassion and love? Or are you going to handle it through shame and hatred and blaming other people and judgmental thoughts on ourselves, right? How are you going to handle your toughest situations in life? So, the more we generate self-compassion and love, the easier that perfectionism and that self-criticism will be to carry. I think we all have that inner self-perfectionist and we all have that inner self-critic. I know we do. But when we can generate that self-compassion and that love, it's way easier to handle that perfectionism and that self-criticism, and we can carry ourselves so much better and be living our life to the happiest and the fullest no matter what. And so the easier it will be for us to love and enjoy, our beautiful and amazing journey called life. We have to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. And it's all about the way that we carry ourselves through it. So I have some really important tips and things that we can implement in our lives, the way that we can look at ourselves and look at our situations that I'm going to walk you through right now. These things have definitely helped me in the past. They continue to help me grow and improve, and I hope they're going to continue and help you grow and improve. And these are all things that it's not an overnight fix, of course. These are things that take time. Changing your mindset is not a quick fix. It is not an easy fix. It is not something that we can just do overnight or even in a week. It takes time to find this type of mindset. And yes, there are definitely things that we can practice right here, right now to be a better self-critic right? And I will walk you through those as well. But you have to remember that everybody is different. You are going to be different than even your best friend who, is maybe dealing with some self-criticism as well. Like, you're going to handle the situation differently than they would handle the situation. And we're all different. We all have to be patient with it. So here are a few things that I think can really help switch our mindset from being that negative self-critic, from looking at ourselves through shame or hatred or running away from our problems or blaming others, and instead switching it to view ourselves and our lives and our hills and our valleys through self-compassion and love. And the first most important thing that I want to share with you is that it's about what you do, not what you are. Okay? So be critical about your actions and behaviors rather than cutting down on the person that you are. Does that make sense? So instead of sentences like, I'm just not smart enough, I can't be successful at this, I will never be successful at this, those negative self-thoughts can lead to a very bad self-image, which then leads to depression and all other mental illnesses and takes us down that rabbit hole of negativity. So you have to focus on your actions or your behaviors, because this is a way less daunting way to construct yourself. Does that make sense? You have to criticize specific, changeable behaviors. It's not about who you are, it's about what you're doing. How can you change those actions? Because your actions will then help transform the person that you are. So, it's not that I'm just not smart enough. You have to change it to, I need to study more. I need to work harder at this. I need to, I should have put more time into studying for that exam. I could have put more time in. I will be putting more time in now to studying for my exams instead of, I'm just not smart enough, I'm never going to pass. Or I just can't be successful at this. You see how those sentences are coming at the person that you are, not about your actions or your habits. Maybe you do need to study harder. Maybe you need to find some healthy studying habits. Because you can pass that test, you can do those things, but you need to make sure that those healthy habits are in place so that you can achieve those goals. So you have to criticize specific, changeable behaviors, not, those sentences that come at the core of who you are. It's about your actions. And then once you start to criticize your actions, construct your actions and your behaviors, it'll transform into that better person, that better version of who you're becoming. So we have to be specific. Think about your changeable behaviors instead of thinking about saying, I'm just not smart enough. It's, I could have studied more. I will study more, right? It's changing that inner dialogue from not attacking your inner core and just, constructing those behaviors that could have followed up to a better outcome for your goals. I hope that makes sense. That is like one of the most important tips that I'm going to be giving you today, is that we have to make sure we're going after our actions, our behaviors, and not who we are at our core. It's time for another break, but when we get back, I'm going to jump into some more things that we can implement into our life, that can really help change our mindset when it comes to self-criticism. I'm going to be talking about paying attention to your failure triggers, what exactly that is, knowing the difference between criticism and judgment. What kind of advice would you give your best friend? Is that the same advice that you should be giving yourself? I'm going to be talking about shifting your focus from yourself to others. There's a trick with that, and talking about studying your successes. So lots to come to round off today's episode. Don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello, hello. We're talking all about the art of self-criticism. It's about what you do. It's about your actions. We have to self-construct our actions, not self-construct the person that we are at our core. We have to criticize specific, changeable behaviors, not come after the person that we are. Okay? Now, my next thing that I want to talk about is pay attention to your failure triggers. Is there something that led you to this mistake? Okay, so for example, let's talk about diets. Okay, say you're on a diet and you want to really stick close to your diet, but you were out with your friends and everyone else was having dessert and you had dessert as well, okay? And so this led you to having some dessert when you were out, which led to your sugar tooth kind of keeping on that track. And then when you got home, you had some more dessert. And then over the next couple days, you maybe got used to having your dessert. So you kept doing it at home. And then you're on this cycle of cheating on your diet. Now, what led you to this mistake? Maybe it was constantly eating out with your friends and being around that dessert. Now, not saying that you can't go hang out with your friends, but that could have led you to kind of the spiral of constantly cheating on your diet when you got home. If you did not eat out and have that dessert with your friends or whatever a few times, then maybe that wouldn't have led you to having that sugar tooth kind of continue on in your home environment. Does that make sense? So it was your failure trigger. Going out and being around your desserts and all of this multiple times a week, if you're going out with your friends a lot, led you to cheating on your diet. Now that is your failure trigger. So once you can recognize your failure trigger, then it can help you not repeat this behavior. Maybe if you really want to stick close to your diet, you do not go out to eat with your friends for a while. Or you don't go out to eat and you only make food at home. Or you invite your friends over to your house and you cook the meal so that you know you're not going to be surrounded by dessert and you'll just be surrounded by the healthy meal that you made for everybody. So it's just kind of like your anxiety triggers or any kind of mental illness trigger. It's important to be aware of what can set you off. You know, what sets you off your track, right? So you have to sometimes criticize external circumstances and then try to change them. Even in situations where we are obviously to blame, there may be still situational factors that pushed us in one direction or another. Okay, I'm going to give you another example. You stayed up late watching TV, but maybe that's partly because your roommates were also watching TV and it was hard to concentrate on your work. Rather than use this as an excuse, you could use it as a leverage, okay? So when you have an exam the next day, now you know that maybe studying at home may not be a good idea. You know, one misconception about social psychology is that it focuses on so much on external influences on the self that it denies individual responsibility. So yes, you can pay attention to your external situational factors that might be playing a role, like your roommates were up late watching TV, but you can't use that as an excuse. You have to turn that into individual responsibility. So I chose to stay home when I knew I had an exam to study for the next day, and I knew that my roommates would be home watching TV. So you're taking the responsibility that I chose to stay home even though I knew the environment might not have been as productive as I needed. So now the next time you use that as leverage to be, okay, it's not a great idea for me to be studying at home the night before an exam when I really, really need to focus. So awareness of the power of situational factors can really help us make better decisions. You have to be aware of these things. If we believe that we're invulnerable to external pressures, then we are more likely to be blindsided by these external factors. So you have to be aware of ourselves. We have to be aware of ourselves, self-awareness, of course, but aware of our external factors, but not use them to blame. Instead of using that as leverage to take that on as an individual responsibility that next time, okay, I know that I need to study elsewhere the night before an exam. And the next thing I want to talk about is knowing the difference between criticism and judgment. Criticism can help you grow as a person. It can help you improve, right? If we find that art of self-criticism, we can use that to become the best version of ourselves. Whereas judgment means that you're tearing down on yourself. Judgment is based on opinion. Criticism is based on observations that leave room for change. So taking on a non-judgmental stance is the most effective way to practice self-criticism. So nothing is good or bad, it's just less or more effective. So instead of what I did is just not good enough, we have to look at it from both sides, from a non-judgmental standpoint. What are the things that were effective and the things that were less effective? So this lets you look at your situation in a non-judgmental way, right? Think about it when someone else criticizes you and it feels like it's coming from such a judgmental standpoint, right? It's from their opinion. And so then when we're self-criticizing, we have to try to not take it from an opinion standpoint, not from a judgmental standpoint, but from a observational standpoint, because observations can leave room for change. Judgment and opinionated criticism is basically just tearing down on ourselves that, we're not good enough, we didn't do it right. That's it. So we have to leave room for change by basing our criticism on observations instead of the judgment, the opinion. Easier said than done. This takes practice to be looking at self-criticism and to be criticizing ourselves in a non-judgmental standpoint. It is one of the hardest things that we have to do. But once we are able to look at ourselves from a viewpoint of observation, then we can leave that room for change and we can be improving ourselves. Now, my next thing is, what advice would you give your best friend? That's how you should be your own critic. Okay, so say, if you made a mistake, something happened, think of it, put yourself in your best friend's shoes, what would you tell your best friend in that situation? How would you come at them in a very judgmental, opinionated way that they are terrible and they're never going to succeed at anything? No, right? You would be encouraging and positive and motivating. You say, okay, look, this is what happened. But that doesn't mean that, that defines you as a person. Let's try to brainstorm some ideas of how we can improve this situation for yourself, right? So talk to yourself as if you would talk to your best friend. Give the same advice that you would give your best friend as that you would give you. Does that make sense? Now, the next thing is shifting your focus from yourself to others. Now, this might sound weird at first, but instead of getting caught up in self-judgment, whether that's positive or negative, it can be helpful to consider how your actions affect other people. So this broader focus can help kind of reorientate your attention to what matters most to you. The people you're trying to help through your work, right? The relationship you want to nurture and encourage you to make amends that benefit others. Does that make sense? So research suggests that people who pursue compassionate goals rather than self-image goals have less conflict in their relationships. They receive more support and they experience less loneliness. So when we're focused on protecting our own self-esteem, other people may represent competition or threats, and we may fail to recognize their needs. So sometimes focusing on other people, how our actions are affecting other people, can actually improve our self-actions and our self-criticism. And the last thing that I want to mention is that we need to study our successes, okay? We have to study our failures and we have to study our successes. By meaning, okay, so what went right here? This is also trying to look at ourselves in a non-judgmental way. There's no good, there's no bad. There's what was more effective and what was less effective. How can I improve myself in this situation, and how can I I do it more effectively? How can I show myself more compassion in a situation? So we have to study our successes. What got me to this point? Did I enjoy my journey? This all relates back to self-reflection and being aware of our external and internal factors, right? That play such a strong role in our successes. Study your successes, break them down, get out your notebooks, and do some self-reflection. What was effective? What was not effective? How can I make it more effective next time? How can I go after my next goal in the most effective way? How did I learn from my past success? What are the things that I learned, and how can I implement those into my new goal, into my next journey, into this next path? So there you have it. That is all I have for the art of self-criticism. I hope this was beneficial today. I hope this helped you kind of get a new perspective on the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we criticize ourselves, and hopefully we can implement a healthier mindset when it comes to self-criticism. So thank you so much for listening to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I had so much fun sharing this information with you. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button. I have new episodes out every single Monday and Thursday. Head on over to those social media pages. I update those regularly. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as do not forget to leave a 5-star review. I would love to hear your opinion on today's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts and anything that you want to share with me. I would love to hear it. So don't forget to leave that 5-star review, leave a comment, or you can also engage with me on our social media channels. I would love to talk with you. Thank you so much for being here. Stay happy, stay positive, and be your own best self-critic. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find the show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast.